Hello everybody, today I'm going to be showing you how to make a table out of matchsticks. You can put these in a dollhouse, you can just look at them, put them up on a shelf, whatever. Get fancy, get creative. I don't know what you're going to make them for, but I'm going to show you how to make them. Okay, so to make this we're going to need some paper, writing utensil, I got a pen, we're going to need a cutting utensil, I have this razor blade, we're going to need our matches, some glue, and then you don't have to have this, but I'm going to be using an emery board. You use it for filing your nails. I find it's very nice for sanding matches because it's a very fine grit sandpaper. You may also need a ruler, just depending on how you're going to do this. Today I'm going to be making a tabletop the size of a quarter. I'm just going to go ahead, I'm going to trace around the quarter. So you're going to want to cut this out just on the outside of the circle. Okay, so I got the circle cut out. I left a little edge around the line. What we're going to do is we're going to turn this over and we're going to work on the back of it. You want to be able to see the circle when we're done. Now we're going to take matches and we're going to glue across here. You want to glue it on the bottom of the match and on the side of the match where you're going to be connecting the matches together. And then you want to make sure they're pushed together really nicely and snugly wuggly. And then you're going to want to let that dry. Okay, so I have my matches on here. You can see I cut some of these a little bit short so I could use the material. You can have some of the wood tips, the burnt tips on here that I'll add to it. Because there's no real supports across here, this is going to bow a little bit, like this one's loose. That's fine, you just want to make sure it's fully dry, otherwise all this is going to be bending and it'll make it a lot harder to work with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this over and I'm going to take my razor blade and I'm going to start cutting this out along the circle. I don't mind, I kind of like it having rough edges to where it's not perfectly round. You may want it to be a little bit rounder than me. So if that's the case, cut on the outside of the line just a little bit. That'll give you some room to sand it down and make it a little bit rounder. Okay, so I have this cut down. You can see it's kind of choppy, and I cut it on the outside of this line. You can see the other side here. A bunch of series of straight cuts will make it kind of round. Like I said though, on mine I like having flat sides. Now we're just going to take the emery board and kind of sand this down. Okay, so I've got the edges sanded down. Now I want to sand the top of the table. Just leave that laying down and we'll sand across it, and that's going to clean this up and make it a very smooth surface. And it's going to be smooth. Now I don't sand anything else on the house normally, but on the table you want it to be a smooth flat surface like a table normally would. And then if you want it to look kind of aged, you can take and sand the corners or the edges down and just drag it at a kind of an angle. Okay, so this one piece is getting kind of loose, so I'm just going to go ahead and add a little bit more glue to it. And that's why you want to make sure you have glue on both sides of the matches, the side and the front, or the bottom of it. Make sure it's really stuck together nicely. Alright, so it's nice and glued up. It's pretty steady. Now on the back side here, you got the nice circle, the paper. If you want to peel that off, go ahead. I'm not going to be seeing the bottom of my table, so it's fine how it is. What we're going to do is, just like with the flooring video, we're going to add some supports to make sure that this doesn't bow. Okay, so we're going to take the matches and we're going to want to take and make a square, but make it to where the points are kind of like on this flat edge here. You see, so the matches are running kind of, well, what would that be? Not perpendicular, but catty corner across the matches. That's going to add as much support as possible. So we're going to want to make sure the square fits inside the circle and kind of cover as much area as possible without going over it or being kind of visible from the top side down or from the sides. So I'm going to cut these up real quick. Now that we have our 4 matches cut, we're going to want a 45-degree angle cut on the ends here. I don't know what that is. You can get your tools out and measure it, whatever. I'm just going to eyeball it. Okay, so they're not exactly 45-degree angles, but they go together a little bit better than one that's just a flat edge. So we're going to want to glue these down inside the square here, kind of get it centered up as best as possible. Mine's not exactly center, and it's not the best looking one, but I'm not going to be seeing the bottom. This is more for supports on the matches. If you're going to be seeing the bottom, you're probably going to want it to look a little bit more pretty, but personally this matches my art style. I kind of like everything off even. Let this dry up and then we'll do the next step. Alright, so this is dried up. What we're going to do now is we're going to take a matchstick and we want to put it diagonally here and another one across here. So we're going to make some cuts. Put this on here and you want to cut it. Now I'm going to cut it down a little bit more. I'm going to want some gaps in between. Okay, so once this is cut down, you're going to want enough room for the match to fit in here. This is going to be really tight because how small the table is itself, but I can take and cut down the table leg to fit in there after this is done. Now I've got one. I'm going to want a second one. You just take and measure it off the first one. Should be good enough. Alright, now that we have both of these, we're going to want to be able to sit them on top of each other and make them flush. So how we're going to do that is we're going to cut a section out of this one halfway through the width of a match, and same on this one. And then when we lay them together, they should lay flat to the table. You can take your pen out and mark it, or you can do what I do and just eyeball it and hope it works. About like that's good. Make sure the other match will sit into it. Yeah, that fits. Alright, now repeat the process on here. It's a little bit easier because you already have this one cut, so you can just line these up. Alright, so both of these are cut. Kind of look like Lincoln logs, the little tiny ones that go around the door or whatever, and they fit. Bam. They sit flush on the table. Now just glue them in place. Alright, so now that you have the X in here, you're going to want to let this sit and dry. What we're going to want to do now is figure out how tall we want this table. I have cut my table legs to be this tall. Whatever dimensions you want, just cut them to that. And all we have to do now is attach them. So I'm going to take some glue, and I'm going to want a pretty generous amount. Stick it in there. That's another reason we have the cross beam, is it's going to help pin these legs into place. Now I'm going to let this dry up and I'll be right back. Alright, so this is pretty well dry. It's going to be dry enough for this next step. That's going to be to paint it. Kind of got this little wobbly. You can take and when these are dry, you can sand the legs down, make them all even so it sits flat if you like. I will not be doing that. Now I'm going to paint this bad boy because it is way too clean to fit into my house. I have this flat brush. It's a shader. See, what is this? It's a Plaid 67050 shader 6 Korea, whatever. Anyway, it's kind of a tough brush. I'm also going to be using some black acrylic paint. I don't need a whole lot, and that's way too much. I'm going to do, just dab it in there, kind of get a lot of the paint off. I'm going to do somewhat of a dry brush. Just barely get it on there. Once that's on there, I'm going to just take some water. Take and get some of the water off first. Smear it around onto the wood. Now you can keep doing this step to make it as dark or as light as you want. Use the water. You can keep adding some water to smear it around. Make sure you get the whole table. Kind of rub the edges. I want to rub the edges clean. I got them a little bit too dark for my taste. Take a little paper towel. This is actually getting pretty wet. Oh, I dislodged one of the legs. You're not going to be seeing the bottom of the table on mine, but I'm going to go ahead and paint it. Just give it a light brush. And then the legs, I don't really want those to be too dark, so I'm going to just dry brush those lightly. And again, using the water, I'm going to smear that paint around. It helps if you've got dirty paint water. It's not so clean, it'll help add some color to it. Okay, so I kind of got the table looking how I like. The table legs are really a lot darker than I would have liked them to have been, but that's fine. On my house, you're not really going to be seeing too much of the bottom anyway. At this point, you can take a finer tip brush. Get a fine tip brush and take some of the black, put it in the crevices of where the matches are. So it makes it look more prominent, kind of brings it out a little bit more. On my table, this match was splintered, or it was cut a little bit weirder. There's a, when they go together, it doesn't quite fit. There's a nice little slant. So I'm going to take and I'm going to bring that natural crevice. It makes a pretty deep crevice. I'm going to darken it a lot and take out all these little features of these matches, and I really want to bring those out. Okay, I've got this to where I like it. I'm going to let this dry up, and we'll do the next step. Alright, so now I'm also going to try and take the emery board, kind of just scratch it up a little bit, sand this back, kind of give it a little more worn look in the middle. I got a little too dark, and I want it a little bit lighter than that. Leave the edges a little bit dark, and that'll also give the recesses where I had painted in the cracks black. Kind of like that. The edges darkened up. You can also take and lighten those up in areas if you'd like. I'm still leaving it kind of dark in areas. I kind of want it to be a little bit sporadic. Some of these I'll take away. This is more of a coffee table kind of thing for me. Okay, so now, because it is a coffee table, there's going to be coffee mugs sitting on this. So I'm going to take my pen that I used earlier to trace my quarter. It's got a nice round tip here. I'm going to take the tip of my pen, dip it in there, and you want to make sure that you don't have, where's the camera at? You blow in it to make sure you don't have a film over it. And then you can also dab some of it off so it's not a full circle of paint. Press it firmly to your table, and you've got a nice little black spot. Do a couple rings, maybe one over here. I don't like that one. You take your paintbrush with some water and hopefully this will come up. You can see it kind of came off. I'm not going to redip my pen because the more I use it, the more it's going to take away the paint. So now I've got the table kind of dirtied up a little bit. I'm going to add a couple more. This is kind of an older table. Put one on the edge there. Put another one over this. So I've got that done up. You can paint the table. You can do whatever you want with it. I'm just going to leave it kind of darkened wood, like it was a natural wood table. You can do this black kind of technique like we did here, and then take acrylics and paint over it. You can make tablecloths. You can make the legs different lengths. At this point, you can just do whatever you want, different sizes. You can add whatever you want on top of it. This is another table I've built right here. This is going to be for the kitchen. It's the same kind of technique, it's just at a larger scale. Again, this one's got, you know, flat edges. I really like that look. It's got a coffee mug on here, some stains. It's got a worn spot where I had put some wood glue down, and it didn't allow the paint to really stick to it. I've made some letters I've put on there, and I'm just going to keep adding some stuff to it. You can do the same with your table, but this is how to make a table out of matchsticks. So I'm really happy with how this turned out. I like the coffee stains. I may add some stuff to this later. Right now, I'm just going to let it dry up, and I'm gonna call this done. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked what you saw, or if you learned something today, you should click like. You should also subscribe. I'm going to try and do a lot more videos that show you how to make things out of matchsticks, while I also work on my matchstick house. Hopefully I'll have my my next video of that up soon. So thanks for watching. I will talk to you guys later. Goodbye.